Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back with a couple more Christmas cards. This time with my black, white, gold theme that I love. And I'll have a link to the playlist I've done because I've done this color combo many times because it's just a tried and true classic fave. So today's video is actually part of a blog hop, day one of blog hops, because there's going to be more than one, for Simon's December release. I'll have all that info in my blog post, link below the video. But to start off with, I'm using the Winter Flower stamp set. This was actually a little like doorbuster deal that came out a few days ago. And then for December, Simon's released a combo with a coordinating wafer die, which always makes me happy. So I've already done a video using this set, and I did like some watercoloring and that with it. But for this one, I wanted to keep it simple. I know a lot of people have told me that they're very intimidated by large images like this, like the idea of coloring them. So regardless of what sort of image you have, but if it's got like detail like this is a great way to get around that. So I stamped this big image onto vellum. So I had it in my MISTI. I used my anti-static powder tool, and then I inked up the stamp with clear embossing ink, and then coated it with detail white embossing powder, and then melted it with my heat tool. Now, when working with vellum and heat embossing, keep your heat tool moving. Do not concentrate it in one spot overly long. That kind of applies to anything you're heat embossing, but vellum, you will notice your embossing powder melts way quicker than it does on cardstock. It's just because vellum is thinner, but vellum will curl and it will burn if you're just sitting there with the heat tool in one spot. So just watch it, because you will literally see the embossing powder melt really quickly. And it's another reason why I just love vellum, is embossing powder melts faster, but it also just, I don't know, there's something about vellum. I love it. So as always, I'm doing things in doubles because why not? I got all the supplies out. So I did the exact same process a second time. Anti-static powder tool, ink up the stamp with clear embossing ink, coat with detail white embossing powder, and then melt it with my heat tool. And then I always tilt everything back and forth in the light to make sure everything is like shiny, raised, melted. If there's any dull greeny areas, those are just spots that haven't been melted yet. So I always want to catch those before I go on to anything else so I don't lose that embossing powder. So I'm going to use the coordinating wafer die, and I like to tape my wafer dies in place. Washi tape works great. I'm a huge fan of this Spellbinders yellow tape. Similar to washi tape, but slightly more, I would call it more durable in a sense. I love it because it's awesome for hot foiling, but when it comes just taping dies into place, you can use regular washi tape. But like I said, I get more use out of this tape. Like I can use it multiple times, and that's what I did here. I'll just peel off the vellum, place this back into place on the second image, press those same pieces of tape down, and I'll use those, I'll keep reusing them. I just stick them to like the edge of my desk, and then I just pull them up. So doing that, and I'm working with my Spellbinders Platinum today. It's kind of hard to judge on camera, but this machine is a beast. It's huge. This is the big one, and I love it. I also love it because Spellbinders released these 6-inch square cutting plates. I'm not sure how long ago. I've had these for a while, and I have multiples for backups. I love these because with this big machine and this big surface area, these smaller plates I can rotate easily. So I can run my dies through at more of an angle without fiddling with the great big plates, etc. And I get perfect cuts. So I like it especially for like background dies like this. I'm using this detail pincushion plate again. I used it in my last video. I'm kind of obsessed with it. Said in my last video, like this is a favorite already. So one thing I do, whether it's one like this, any sort of plate that, that has lots of, little tiny areas that like to get caught up inside the plate, or sometimes they're just caught up in your cardstock. Having a die pick, huge bonus, must-have tool. Another one is this Spellbinders tool-in-one that has the little wire bristles, and I just roll it over. And normally I'm doing this over the garbage. I'm not like doing this right over my desk making a big old mess, but I just wanted to show it on camera. And this didn't have tons of little pieces, so it was easy to sweep all this up. But those are two other tools that I highly recommend if you don't have. They're great to have in your craft arsenal with die cutting. So I did my die cutting, and then I pulled out one of the sentiments from that winter flower set, and I'm going to stamp that onto some white cardstock. Same thing. Anti-static and powder tool. I'm going to ink up the stamp with clear embossing ink, and then stamp the sentiments. With the sentiments, I'm going to ink and stamp them a couple times just to make sure I get full solid coverage of the entire sentiments, that when I cover it with the embossing powder, everything is fully covered. So ink it up, stamp it, do it a second time, and then I'm going to coat this with Simon's Gold embossing powder. So, and also with the embossing powder. Just FYI, because people do comment, they're like, how many containers is that in that big sandwich container? I'm not sure. The white, it's a lot. No one needs this many. Like, one container of embossing powder is going to last you a long time. I just ended up after, all these years with kits, different things, ordering extra, I don't know, I ended up with multiples. And that's what finally forced me to using these big Sistema containers. But I've shown in videos tons over the years. One container of embossing powder, or one of each color, whatever, and a coffee filter. Coffee filters are great. I still keep a stash of coffee filters for my other powders that I don't have, 30 containers of. So anywho. For those sentiments, I used a wafer die from the new Mixed Labels wafer die set that actually is meant to go with a previously released stamp set. But I love the shapes of some of them, especially that one. So I die cut those sentiments with that wafer die, and I'll have a link to that as well. And then I also stamped the winter flower image onto the insides of my cards with Simon's Fog ink. It's another must-have, in my opinion. This is a really good neutral ink. And my lighting, of course, is still not the greatest, so it doesn't show up very much on camera. But it's just a nice light gray. You guys have seen me use this a ton of times in videos. It's just like my go-to neutral. So I stamped that great big image on the insides of my card bases with that Fog ink. Once that was stamped, I grabbed another sentiment, this time from the new Holiday Greetings set, and I put that in the lower kind of corner here on the insides of the cards. And I'm going to stamp that with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. So get everything lined up, rub that stamp with my finger because it's a brand new stamp. This just helps the ink take better. I was talking about that a little bit more in my last video. And then I'm going to ink up the stamp with that Nocturne ink, stamp that onto the inside of the card, and then repeat the process on the second card. So that's going to finish both of my card insides. On the outside of the card, I had cut down that black cardstock that I cut die cut with a detail pincushion plate. I trimmed it down a little bit, and then I also have a piece of black cardstock, just solid. And then I'm putting craft tacky glue on the back of this. It looks like a lot of glue. It's not. I'm just like scribbling and not really squeezing the glue tube very much, just getting a decent little coverage. And then I'm adhering that to the black cardstock, so it gives it that tone on tone that I always rave about when it comes to background like wafer dies. I'm always like, white on white, it's amazing. So this time I did black on black because I wanted the vellum poinsettia to really pop out. So when it comes to adhering vellum, something like this, adhesive shows through vellum. Even the kind that claims to be vellum adhesive, you can still see it. So you got to get creative. Depending on what it is and what you're doing, it's best to hide it. So I used a little bit of liquid adhesive, and then I covered that with the sentiment. And then I trimmed down just a couple little strips with my trimmer, just some gold glitter paper. So this is a dual purpose. It gives me a little bit of glitter, but I can also add little thin lines of adhesive behind that on that vellum to adhere that down. So it gives it a dual purpose. So once I got those adhered, I'm going to adhere this card front to the card base. Again, craft tacky glue. Just a good little scribble of that. And then once this is adhered, I'm going to shimmy it into place a bit. This is also why I love the craft tacky glue, because it gives me wiggle room, those few seconds to start lining things up properly. And then I'm going to flip the card over, trim off everything that's hanging over the edges. And then another way to hide adhesive with vellum is to use little bits of bling or sequins, you know, things like that. So I put a little dab of adhesive behind the vellum, press it down, and then I put another dab on the front, stick a little pearl down. I'm using some Studio Katia satin gold pearls that were just, again, meant to be. So that adhered I only wanted it in that one spot because it was really curled up there. The rest of it, I'm okay with the vellum, you know, popping up here and there. It gives it a little extra something. But I'm going to add a few extra pearls anyway because they're pretty and bling. And I know, I didn't do splatter on this. Splatter on vellum gets finicky and sometimes it doesn't dry. So I didn't want to risk it. Otherwise, I was going to add splatter, but it just sometimes doesn't want to dry. So instead, I've got the bling and the little bit of glitter cardstock, gold heat embossing. So fun. Anyway, that finished off the cards. So, like I said, this is part of a blog hop. There's tons of inspiration and giveaways and all that fun stuff. So I will have that info in my blog post. It'll be linked directly below the video. I'll link to all the supplies I used. There'll be picture links in my blog post, etc. So you can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!